Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe weekly podcast. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe thought we would last. Talking Joe is there. Find each other like a married couple. Our podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there.
Talking Joe is the code name for a completely untrained special podcast force. Its purpose, to produce a regular comic review show while breaking and replacing a series of presenters from across the world.
Talking Joe. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. We are on our soapbox. Nobody seems to care. Fighting for fandom wherever there's trouble. The podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast that comes out on a Thursday. With me today is my co-host, a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hi, Mark. Hello, listeners.
Welcome, indeed, listeners. Good to speak to you once again. We're not going to have a big preamble because we got important things to be getting on with. And today, that is talking to Netho Diaz. Netho Diaz is an artist who has made a big impact on G.I. Joe in recent years. He's had penciler credits for 17 issues of G.I. Joe ARAH with Larry Hama, plus the 4-issue Silent Option miniseries. His run started in 2017 with issue 246, The Dawn of the Arishikage, which introduced Dawn as the successor to Snake Eyes. Other issues include Special Missions Part 4 that featured Destro, the Artificial Intelligence arc, sharing about half of the art on Snake Hunt arc with Robert Atkins, and most recently the standalone Untold Tales Part 1 that was in issue 276. Netho's other professional credits include work on Dungeons & Dragons for IDW, Halo for Dark Horse, as well as Aquaman and Justice League for DC Comics, and many more. So welcome, Netho. It is good to have you on the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for inviting me to the show.
It's our absolute pleasure. So tell us a little bit about what the situation is at the moment. You're dialing in to us from all the way over for us, but local for you, Brazil. Is that right?
Yes, I do live in Fortaleza. It's way far from USA, but thanks to internet, we can talk a little bit.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit what it's like there. Give us a flavor of your hometown.
Well, there is a beautiful beach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to talk beach here, and it's hot as hell.
Oh, crikey!
And there is quite a few artists here, such as Paul Rodrigues, Alan Goldman. Both have worked at DC Comics.
Uh-huh.
And Daniel Brandão, he has studied art Kubert School. Great artist. And Geraldo Borges, who was my comic teacher.
Your comic teacher?
He is now working at Dark Horse.
Going back to your city, is there a downtown? Are there there are lots of buildings and lots of apartments and lots of people? Is it crowded?
Yes, I do think there is the São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, then Fortaleza.
Okay. So the third major city? Okay.
Yes. There is a Chinese word. I'm studying Chinese, so I may be a little confused here and start talking Chinese with you guys. Sorry.
Well, I'm near Boston, and Boston has Chinatown. All these major cities have that, that area of one particular nationality or another.
Yeah, that there is some here too. We, I do believe that there is about 1,000 Chinese here. It is not that big, but we can chat with them a lot.
And what led you to study Chinese? That might sounds quite unusual.
Yeah, I love the language. I think is beautiful to hear, and I want to talk with him about Bible and stuff. So some of them can't speak Portuguese, and as you guys can see, my English is just terrible. So I decided to study Chinese with which I believe is much better to learn.
Oh right, okay.
It's actually easier.
You think it's an easier language? That's interesting.
Yeah, I do think
And
so.
and you mentioned it that it's hot as hell where you are at the moment, but I guess for an artist that's the temperature's quite important because things like the temperature, the humidity, they're going to do strange things to your paper, and if you're getting
Yeah,
sweaty hands and that's
yeah, I
going
do
onto
have
the
that.
paper and things, is that an issue?
Yes, a big one. Uh, my hands keep sweating, and it kind of destroy my paper.
Oh no.
So I use some of the papers to protect the actual board
Uh-huh. Yeah, like
from
like
drawing.
leaning on more paper to protect the
Yeah,
board as you're drawing kind of thing.
yes. Which makes me way too slow. Could be way faster without that.
I think every artist wishes they were about 10 times faster, right?
How fast or slow are you? How long does it take to pencil a page to ink a page?
Well, I don't ink my interiors because my ink style and my pencil style is very detailed. So
Hmm.
I decided to do just pencils. Actually, actually in GI Joe to 250, I tried to ink my work and it did not work it out.
Oh no.
It was
Just
way too
look.
slow. We needed two more inkers to meet the deadline. The deadline.
Uh-huh. I see, yeah. Because that it's credited to the Incas for 250 are credited to you plus Alison Rodriguez and Thiago
Yes,
Gomez. So a
yes,
mix of three Incas on that one.
yeah. But my pencils do take like uh, 5 hours long to finish a page.
So you can comfortably draw a whole issue in 1 month?
Yeah, but I don't do more than 5 pages or 6 pages a week
Hmm.
because I do have a lot of pen in my bag in my hand, so I have to rest a lot.
Okay.
Do you stretch or exercise for your back and your neck and your hand?
Not as much as I should,
Ah,
but before this pandemic thing, I used to play volleyball and broke my, I believe I broke like 3 fingers, something,
Oh, that's not
in
good.
my drawing hand. Then I broke my hand, went home, and started drawing a cover.
Oh,
oh,
And I give up in the half and asked someone else to ink my unfinished pencils back then.
how long was your recovery before you were drawing again?
I had to start again in like 2 or 3 days
Wow.
with a lot of pen, but you have to work.
that's harsh. And do you is your hand it's recovered now?
Yes, thank God.
Absolutely.
At least until I get back to volleyball and broke again.
And obviously we're living in strange times, across the world with the pandemic. We
Yeah.
over in the UK we often hear about Brazil, about the difficult situation
Hmm.
that's over there, that I think you guys have had it quite bad, and you've got a leader, President Bolsonaro, who seems to be quite a divisive figure, and which is obviously a difficult dynamic to have if it's not being taken seriously and maybe the way that it should. How are things at the moment? Does it feel is it still feel very bad, or does it feel like things are on a route to being a bit normal? And kind of what's your experience been like over the
Hmm.
last couple of years, as this we've been living in these very unprecedented times?
Uh, I do think it's going better. It's getting better. I mean,
Hmm.
uh, I just saw some news about that and saw that I can get uh, vaccinated.
Vaccinated. Uh-huh.
Yes, in like 2 months. I'm confused with Chinese. 20, 28 years old.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So I
yeah.
can get vaccinated in like 1 or 2 months. 2 months, which is great.
Will you have to travel far to get the
No,
vaccination?
no, there is. I do think I can do that like 2 blocks away from my home.
Oh, wow. I had to drive 40 minutes. But also, if I had waited a month, I think we could
Mm,
have walked 2 blocks to get
right.
vaccinated.
Yeah, there is a hospital right here. So if I die or something, we have help.
Okay, that sounds encouraging. And you're still a young guy, so hopefully less to worry about uh personally. And so yeah, we often sort of talk about people's origin stories when we're talking to them about how they got into both comics, but also specifically into GI Joe. So I was just wondering, you as uh, as a youngster growing up in Brazil, what was your early exposure to GI Joe? Because I know that specifically over in Brazil, the license was held by the Australia toy
Hmm.
company, and so they were creating their own line, that was branded as Commandos M Aco, which is probably pronounced incorrectly. But as a young guy as well, you were probably too young to miss that really golden age of the early mid 80s, when GI Joe was at its biggest. So kind of, when did you first encounter it and be aware of it, and did you get into it when you were a kid as well?
Yeah, fortunately, my uncle, I still have a lot of GI Joes and He-Man and Grayskull. Then when I was a kid, they let us, me and my cousin, play with all of this. Then he has some vehicles
Hmm.
and some figures. I actually don't remember which figures they have, but we played a lot, and I love it. Those airplanes, those his tanks, I love it.
Hmm. So it made quite a big impression from playing with your uncle's toys.
Yeah, yeah. That's my first glance at G.I. Joe franchise.
Were you also watching the TV show or reading G.I. Joe comics?
There is no G.I. Joe comics here in Brazil, and I don't actually remember the TV show. Although I watched Thundercats, He-Man, and other famous. 18th
Mm-hmm.
show, but there's no G.I. Joe at TV. Not that I remember. Maybe before that.
Yeah. Does I know that in some countries it was broadcast on television as Freedom Force, but I don't know which.
No, here in
countries.
Brazil, they were called like Comandos em Ação,
Right. Okay.
like Action Commands or something, which is
Yeah.
a really cool name in Portuguese.
Can you say that? Can you say that again, just so I can get the get the pronunciation?
Comandos em Ação.
Excellent. So commanders in action. Is that?
Yes.
That's the translation.
Yes.
Cool.
When you were playing with these toys, did you also go to toy stores, or were there larger stores that sold toys?
Yeah. I actually still go. I actually still try to find some G.I. Joes here, but there's no easy mission to accomplish. I haven't seen yet any classified figures here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid, I think there was no G.I. Joe already.
Mm-hmm.
They have been extinct already.
Since you've gotten older and worked on the book yourself, have you ever bought some GI Joes or been sent some by various people? Have you sort of built up a little bit of a collection now?
I do collect now.
Uh-huh.
I have some figures. I actually bought that Dreadnought with his motorcycle. I think it's Zartan.
Uh-huh. Zartan. Okay, cool.
Pretty cool. It's my favorite. I have some superheroes too, some G.I. Joes, and upcoming Action Force from Valorverse.
Aha. Yeah, you're going to get sent some of the figures from the Valorverse Action Force.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
What were the first comics that you read?
Spiderman. That was drawn by Romita Jr. And the cover, this amazing cover by Scott Campbell.
Oh yes.
Oh, so the those were the issues around the late 400s and the early 500s, written by J. Michael Straczynski.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those were published in America
2004.
around
2004,
Yeah.
2003.
I think here even earlier. I think those were 2000, 2001, 2002.
Maybe.
Okay.
It was a long run to be fair.
Because it takes a year or 2 years to arrive here.
Right.
Uh-huh. As
Were
a
you-
reprint.
Did you buy those at a store? Did you read someone else's copies?
I got one and have just one for like 2 years, and drawn and copy everything and learn how to draw those shapes Romita Jr. does, and he does pretty well, and it helped me a lot to improve my skills. But before that, I remember seeing some Joy Mad X-Men too, and Ultimate Spider-Man, because my uncles still got some comics. They have lot of comics each month, so they keep giving me the Spider-Man ones. Since I was a kid, they got one, they hid it, and then they gave it to me. My experience with G.I. Joe comics is just like 10 years later, about 2014, 2015, something.
Okay, not too much longer before you started working on the
Yes.
book yourself then.
Yes. When I first saw, I remember talking to my agent and asking him to try to put me into the book.
So it made quite a big impression then.
Yeah, Yeah, I remember Gallant was the artist back then, and I saw one of his cool covers. I don't remember which issue it was, but I love it, that cover, and used it to do my version of that.
Uh-huh.
Then my agent asked me to do some interior sample too, and I didn't want it to copy any page, so I asked him some script, and he gave me some of Chuck Chuck Dixon.
Chuck Dixon.
And before I started, I fired my agent. He was robbing me and some
Oh
others.
no.
Yeah. I do believe he is in jail now.
Wow.
If he isn't, he should.
Good grief.
Yeah. But in some of our emails chain, I saw David Hedgecook's email. He was
Uh-huh.
editor in IDDB.
Yeah.
And I started to send him some of my artwork. I was hopeless, but he actually answered me and asked me to keep feeding him with more and more samples. So I did that for like 5-6 months, and so at some point he gave to me a board game artwork to do. It was Escape from 10 million BC or something, I don't remember. I had to draw dinosaurs, and so far I have never drawn any dinosaurs. It was a challenge for me, but I know what that means. I mean, if I do a good work, he would give me more. So I tried my best, and he loved it. Then he asked me to do samples to work on Masks, the upcoming series.
The Mask, the like the 80s cartoon
Yes.
property.
Yes. So it was a pin-up, and I did a terrible one. And he's a gentle, so he said, "Oh, it's looking good." But the censor asked someone else, and I lost the job. Then I keep sending him another of my samples, and he asked me to do samples for Dungeons and Dragons. He said me it need to have some humor elements, which was new for me because I have never worked with such a thing. And I did 2 pages, and they liked it. I got the job. When I finished it, David said to me that he have shared some of my samples with others editors, and they like it. So Tom Waltz asked me to do First Strike backup story,
Yeah.
which have some G.I. Joe characters, including Destro, which is my favorite. And I did my best because I knew that could be my chance to get G.I. Joe book. So I did my best efforts, even it haven't looked that great. But then when I finished, Tom Waltz sent me an email asking me to do a G.I. Joe book.
Wow.
And it was awesome.
I mean, it was quite a quick trajectory by the sounds of things, that you're sort of working on some samples fairly quickly. You're given something small to try out, then you're on your first book, second book, and then onto a quite a big book in terms of working on the main G.I. Joe title within a very short time period.
Yeah, it's quite unusual. I mean, but when they asked me to do G.I. Joe book, I was, oh my god, it's unbelievable. I finally got G.I. Joe, and I have to do some characters design for the new Snake Eyes, and Larry have sketched the the major details of her costume, but Tom asked me to do some changes with I was quite comfortable to do. So I did. They approved it, and he asked me to ink my original character design. He he would use it as a cover, but I thought it myself. It's my first cover. I want to do something awesome here. I need to make my name now. So I started another couple layouts and shared with him some of my ideas, and he loved it. Then he approved my cover, my pencils. Then in the final book, they have my pencils variant cover, my inks variant cover, and different colors. There's like 3 or 4 different covers with only drawing, and it was like a dream coming true.
Can we go back a step? Before you were sending your samples to David Hedgecock at IDW, and that's not a name I think many G.I. Joe fans are familiar with. He was an editor at at IDW, and then later he was associate publisher. But what is it about G.I. Joe that made you want to draw it so much?
The action, the ninja stuff. I knew that Larry works in Marvel way style, so I knew that would be such a great challenge for me. And at the book,
he's writing the plot, not a full script.
yes.
Okay.
And as I was looking through the book, I saw some great action, great scenes, and imagine how it would look if I was drawing it. And it got me quite excited. So, too sad that I couldn't draw too much Snake Eyes, the original Snake Eyes, because I really wanted to. But they have some flashback scenes, so that was good.
Yeah, I mean, you had 3 Snake Eyes to draw. You had the original Snake Eyes in the flashbacks. You had Dawn, the new, cover star of your first issue, and then you also had the Throwdown Snake Eyes, who looks very similar to the original Snake Eyes as well. So it's Snake Eyes a go-go.
Yeah. But I do think that my first take on the original Snake Eyes, that was not a flashback, it was my last issue.
Oh yes, of course, the Untold Tales.
Yeah, it's too bad. I love the visor, looks so cool.
Yeah, and you were able to hide a little Easter egg on that. Is it almost the last panel of the book? In the visor, a little detail with the number of the issue where Snake Eyes had died.
213, I believe.
Was that your idea, or did that come from Larry's plot?
My idea.
Nice.
I actually do that a lot. There's a lot of Easter eggs sprayed at my G.I. Joe pages. And my some of my pages, I don't remember which one was. G.I. Joe 275 is the last Snake Hunt issue, and there are some there's a splash page we can see Springfield and some papers flowing around, and I put some Easter eggs up there too.
Oh yeah, I've grabbed it now. Yeah, you're leaving Springfield, a nice little town, and there's some newspapers flying around. We've got War question mark Untold Tales 276, news in IDW, teenager missing. Oh, it says Megan. So is that shout out to Megan Brown?
Yeah,
And so it says African news.
because I
And
knew
we've got-
already about Sherlock.
Aha. Oh, 281. Yes.
Yes, because at that point, Walt have asked me to do that new work, and I wasn't able to because I back then I was already signed up to another job,
Ah.
so I had to turn it down.
Can we ask what that other job was?
I unfortunately can't share yet,
Aha.
but it is written by Andy Lanning and on Mars.
Who's the first? Ron Mars. Who's the first name again?
Andy Lanning.
Oh, Andy Lanning.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, that narrows it down. I could guess a couple publishers that might have those two writers make a story.
Yeah, but I bet you were wrong.
All right.
Because it's actually not a comic publisher.
Okay.
It is some board game publisher that decided to make it into a comic book, a original graphic novel.
Are you still working on that project? Did you finish it?
Yeah, I'm doing the issue 3.
Okay.
Out of 4.
Okay. Do you have your project after that figured out?
I had, but I lost it last week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Too bad. That happens.
Do you think you'd want to return to G.I. Joe someday, or you want to do something new and different?
I'm not closer to G.I. Joe. I love G.I. Joe and definitely would go back. But our schedules have to work just fine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's quite hard to happen because G.I. Joe's schedule is crazy.
Yeah. I was gonna say I love the story that Robert Atkins told about working on issue 275. He said that he started working on 275 and then you started working on 276, the Untold Tales issue. You finished your issue. He was not even halfway through his.
Yeah.
You came in and finished it off. So you did like 1.5 issues in the same time that it took him to do his half the issue.
Yeah, I actually didn't know back then I was going back to help him. So I worked pretty slow. I was doing like 4 pages a week or something. I could do way more, but my last issue schedule is great, so let's do something cool here. In issue the last Snake Hunt issue, there was a lot of splash pages and a lot of characters.
Yeah.
That takes a while to do. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, Robert spoke about how challenging he found it to do that single, splash page image to tell the story, because you as an artist, he didn't have the tools to be able to show that kind of sequential progression of the story. You had to freeze frame a particular moment, decide what angle, all of these things,
Yeah.
which was quite quite challenging from a decision making point of view, where how to approach each page. Did you find a similar sort of thought process when you were doing yours?
Yeah. And by the way, so sorry, Robert. I didn't know about this word and kind of screw up drawing a different
Oh,
sword.
no. The
So
sword.
sorry,
Yeah.
man. But yes, it's quite challenger because we don't have that much time. So I need to finish my pages. He have to finish his, and we have the same schedule to do that. So when I have a major question, I do it and wait for him. So meanwhile, I do another page. But I do like to work doing progressive pages. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4.
Mm-hmm.
So it keep me excited to do some splash pages in future or some cool pages I want to do. But some mistakes happening here. I remember people saying that there was a lot of zombies around there, some dead characters that come back to life. But that's not my mistake, but I did some too.
Yeah, you unintentionally drew a few zombies.
Yeah. But when I was working on Snake Hunt, I remember thinking myself, I'm working with the major G.I. Joe artist. How the heck can I match his work? So I tried to do my best pages, some detail pages, some cool layouts, and in the last issue we have some amazing cool splash pages to do, and I remember having like 2 days to do one in particular. It was some with Destro flying around and some trucks down there.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah.
It took a while to do. A lot of things happen, and we have to constantly checking out the references to keep consistency as much as possible.
For reference, you're using pictures of toys on the internet or
Yeah.
toys that you own or comics that IDW has sent you?
I use whatever I have in my hand. I mean, if I have to draw on Destro, I have the figure, but I don't have the figure for those trucks or for that Destro flying thing. I don't remember the
Oh,
name.
the despoiler?
It's the anti-gravity pod.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think, that
The
he's using.
AGP.
Yes, I don't have that. So I remember searching, googling around, and find some. But when script says here are Snake Eyes, Duke, and Falcon, it's cool. But when started to say another of, for me, G.I. Joe, I don't know, that's quite hard to find cool references because sometimes there is a Tiger Force version of him, so I don't know which one I should use. So I use the one I do think it looks cooler.
And when you sort of heard about the original idea behind that Snake Hunt art, where they're looking to include every single Joe and Cobra ever, did that fill you with excitement or a bit of horror and terror that you might have to draw so many different characters, or a bit of both?
When I first heard about that, I saw that Robert would work on it, so I feel bad for him. You know, he had a lot of research to do. But after issue his fourth or his second issue, Tom Waltz asked me to help him out. So I thought it myself. No, now I am screwed. So, you know, that's a job. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Do you keep a schedule every day? Do you wake up at a certain time and start drawing, or do you drink coffee first? Do you draw at night? What is your schedule?
I wake up like 10, 11 morning and eat something and start working and stop to lunch and like 1 hour later I'm going back and just stop when I finish. So I usually work like 5 hours a day or 6. It depends of how much details there is in the page.
Yeah. So you're saying you sort of do about a page a day, and a page takes you about 5 or 6
Yeah,
hours. So that, compared to some of the discussions that I've had with various artists, that sounds relatively fast. So have you always been able to kind of work at that kind of pace, or have is that something that's developed over time that you've been able to speed up as you've kind of got practiced, or?
yes. You know, like 4 months ago, I was waiting for this work I'm doing, and I was waiting for the script, and it was really late because some licensor changed. So I got another job and got another, and when I saw myself, I was doing 3 issues, and it was crazy. Some weeks I was doing like 8 pages in a cover at weekend. 8 pages pencils and cover pencils and inks per week,
Mm.
which is crazy for me because I do like to do detailed pages. So when I have to do too many pages, it's impossible for me to do the style I want to do.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you can see that at G.I. Joe, if you look at issue 261, the first artificial intelligence, it was very detailed. It was my first issues. But if you look at issue that are last issue, 264, 65,
Yeah.
it was
65.
way less detailed and very rushed because of the schedule. So, if you take more time here, you lost some time there.
This brings a question to my mind. You drew a cover for the new printing of the yearbook
Yeah,
with Duke and Deep Six and Mutt and the Sky Striker behind them. And that cover is supposed to remind us of the original artwork.
yes,
So your drawing is a little more cartoony to look like Michael Golden's original cover. And of course, it's a different angle on the same characters in the same place.
yeah,
And that cover has much less detail than your other art, but it still feels authentic and looks really satisfying. And I'm hearing you say that you want to have a certain style and a lot of detail. Is there a happy medium where, like the G.I. Joe yearbook cover, you could draw less detail but know that going in from the beginning, and it could be consistent through the whole story, and then maybe you wouldn't have to work that extra hour or on the weekend?
Actually, now And like that cover, I'm focusing on characters. You know, at that cover, there's almost none background, so you can focus on characters and draw them very nicely. But in the actual interiors, you have to draw background. It, it's important for the story. So interiors sometimes takes way longer than I wish it could.
I hear you on backgrounds and the importance of where everyone is. I think what I'm focusing on is the actual amount of detail in people's faces and costumes.
Mm.
When I think of your art in issues of G.I. Joe and in Silent Option, I think of how energetic the poses and the faces are, right? I can tell that you are interested in drawing the action. But I also think of the fine detail. There are many small, thin lines on clothing and on helmets and on weapons. And as much as I like that, I love all of that detail. But I also find a lot of artistic styles that have less detail to be just as satisfying, which is why I bring up that yearbook cover. When I look at that yearbook cover, it doesn't feel like a compromise. I don't think, oh, Netho didn't have as much time. It's like apple pie or cherry pie. You know, like one isn't better than the other. It's just different.
First, thank you. And second, when I ink myself, there is easier way to make it look not rushed. But when someone else inks you and someone else colors your work, it will definitely look different from what you imagine in first place. So I'm still trying to find the balance, between details and cool stylistic something I could do and meet the deadline.
Right, right.
And talking about your style, I mean the style, your personal style is fairly distinctive and very recognizable. When you're opening the book, that there's no doubt who the artist is, and it's a slightly more dynamic, modern superhero style, and reading perhaps the J. Michael Straczynski Spider-Man, I can kind of see that superhero energy in as an influence. I've mentioned before that I see some sort of crossover in the style of Mike Deodato Jr.
Mhm.
In that Marvel style. I don't know if that is an artist that you admire or not, but yeah, it's a less traditional GI Joe style. When you think about GI Joe, you often think about the likes of Rod Wiggum, and it's a kind of quite traditional, almost house style. Was there ever a discussion with editorial about the kind of style that you'd use, or was that a discussion, or was they just aware of from your samples how you drew and just let you get on with it?
Um, I worked at G.I. Joe for like 3 years. So when I got to see my finished work, I can see something I don't like. And when I see someone else's work, I see something I want to do like that. So for G.I. Joe, some of my first issues in Down of Arashikage,
Hmm.
um, I remember I wanted to do something more stylistic and cool layouts, something like that, like a puzzle. So because there was some detectives and there was some investigation, and I wanted to do layouts like puzzles, like they are making it, uh, putting pieces together. But after that, I remember saw John Hoyle work, and I love it. I'm a huge fan of his work. So I saw that people love that too. Then I thought to myself, if I do something like that on interiors, maybe people like it. So I tried that on Silent Option was my first shot on a more dirty style and more dimly, more images, you know. And I was happy with that. So when I go back to G.I. Joe ongoing series, I try to keep that going on, and it was fun. Less realistic style is way more fun to do. You can play with characters' expressions and their bodies, the action, layouts, and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I was just alluding to before was kind of and I think Tim's mentioned before is kind of like the dynamism of, and the energy that you can see in your pages, and particularly not following a kind of standard square grid. A lot of the time, the grid layout will be quite unconventional, varying from page to page, and the figures are almost breaking out from the panel a lot of the time. So it strikes me that you must be constantly challenging yourself to kind of think about the layouts of the pages. You're not just drawing out the grids and then fitting the figures in them. It's trying to do something different every time.
Yeah, I try to be creative with my layouts because I hate to do layouts, but I know how important it is. So uh, also, I remember when I was drawing the first arc, it was painful for me to draw those weapons and guns and something. And I remember someone pointing out that guns didn't look right. So in my next issues, I tried to do it better. And in Silent Option, I remember looking a lot of guns pictures, which helped me a lot. And I could do way more violent and way more action and do everything I wanted to do on Silent Option. And I do like that. I do like. I do think there was my best issues.
Yeah, and the thing about striking about Silent Option is it does seem a lot more violent than a typical GI Joe issue or series. Was that kind of an intent going into it, that it would be a slightly more mature, inverted commas, series, that there would be slightly more graphic violence, or is that just how the story turned out and how you interpreted it?
Actually, they asked me to slow down with that, but
Tone it down.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
please don't do that much of blood. And I do what I have to do. If Larry says there is someone shooting out at someone else, there will be blood, and I have to put that blood all in black, as they asked me. But it happens. There was on scripts. I remember there was a page with 6 panels, and panels on left was G.I. Joe and Penzo Wright, where people getting shooted at the breast, the head, and exploding out. And what the heck could I do? So I tried to to slow down the blood, but the violence is there.
Yeah, I mean the grand finale of that, you've got Firefly shooting the villainess in the face there,
Yeah.
and it's showing her there, and the dialogue says he shot off half her face. She's choking on her own blood and bone fragments, and her dialogue is.
Well, there's a long tradition in American comics of making the violence less visible because of rules that were in place starting in the 1950s, like, you know, blood can't be red, it has to be brown or black, or you can't show the exit wound. And so famously there are some comics where someone is getting shot or stabbed, and either you just don't see the bullet or the sword go out the other side, or it's covered up by a sound effect, or if it's a sword, it's sort of poking the clothing forward and not poking through the clothing, or if it's poking through the clothing, it's not then covered in blood. And even though those rules don't really exist anymore in comics, sometimes they're still followed.
Yeah, and I still try to not to do that much of blood, but sometimes you can't avoid it.
I was going to say the other memorable part of the on-panel violence that we saw with that stuck with me was from the dawn of the Arishikage Part 3 to issue 248, which was an all-silent issue, which kind of featured Dawn up against some red ninjas and kind of flashbacks and paralleled back to the silent issue 2021. And there's a, I think in here it's a panel where she's got poking two swords through a red ninja, and then using his body to defend herself from an exploding grenade. It was particularly striking and gruesome.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy those sort of fairly gruesome action sequences?
Actually, when I got the plot or script, I remember what McFarlane always say: try to make it look as cool as possible. So I tried to make a huge explosion and a lot of blood and a lot of death, and it helps to get the vibe of story. There was another page, the first artificial intelligence issue that Bomb Strike, no, the blonde girl.
Yeah, I think is that Bomb Strike or is that Cover Girl?
Cover Girl, yes. And she was ride some vehicle, and script says she's arriving the scene. So I remember thinking, how do I make it look cool? So I drew her coming through the wall and breaking it all in a huge panel on the page. So when script says something is happening, we need to think how to make it look even cooler, So when he says there is violence, it's very possible, it's very likely you put a lot more violence in there.
I wanted to shift gears and ask you about where you work and how you learned to draw comics. So Hascunho Studio?
Hascunho and Comic Con Art, they are partners.
Partners. Okay.
Yeah. So
So
they just get me the job.
okay. So
Uh,
they're your representation.
yes. I
Okay,
mean,
it's not a studio where you go to work in a room with other artists.
no. Uh,
Okay.
I work in home. I have a mini studio when I work every day. And my wife work aside me. She as she is now colorist of comics.
Okay.
So I learned it as a kid. As I told you guys, my uncles are like nerds and they like all kinds of toys and figures and comics and of course drawing too. So they when I was a kid, I asked them a lot to draw for me, and they draw a lot Spiderman and X-Men and some other stuff. And then I wanted to draw just like them, which now I believe they don't draw that good. But you know, it was fun. So when I was a kid, I saw the comics, X-Men, Spider-Man, Avengers. They have some G.I. Joe too, like first issues or something. And uh, I keep improving my skills, trying to do it better and better to look like Joy Mad, Roger Cruz, and Mike Deodato, which I love it. At some points, I was just drawing for fun. I was a teenager and I didn't believe I could actually work with that. But my mother always believed me, so she sent my work to Mike. Um, she sent an email to him, and he said it was cool, but needs to study more, you know. So she sent to Daniel Brandão, which I early mentioned here, and he asked me to went his studio. He have a art school here in Fortaleza. So he liked my drawing and give give me a lot of script samples so I could work out on some interiors too, and a lot of books that I could study and improve my anatomy skills. But they his school was fully, so I couldn't work or stood with him, and he appointed up his friend Geraldo Borges. Then I started to study with him, which improved a lot of my skills. Back then, Geraldo was working at Green Lantern back then.
On Green Lantern.
Yes.
Can you describe how you learned from Gerald Borges? I mean, he was. Were you drawing samples and he was fixing them? Were you helping
Yes.
him draw his pages?
Yes, he was reviewing my samples. So sometimes he actually get another paper and use some light box and show me how I should do. And at some point, you start realizing what he will going to fix. So you do that before him. And I remember I studied with him like 5 months. Almost every day, I was talking to him and asking help. And when I finished it, I got my first job drawing comics for Silver Fox Comics, some zombie story or something. It was like 2011, 2012 or something.
So your apprenticeship which lasted 5 months, were you going to his studio every day? Were you visiting him sometimes?
He doesn't live in Brazil anymore. He's living in Chile, like South America.
Okay. So at the time, were you sitting with him in the same room, or were you mailing him samples? Because you mentioned a light box and fixing your
Yes,
mistakes.
yes. I went to his studio to
Okay.
comic class, but I was the only one to actually, break into comics and international market.
Those artists that you mentioned whose work means so much to you, like John Romita Jr. or Joe Madureira or Roger Cruz, do you still follow their work? Do you have time to look at comics and read comics, or is so much of your day drawing comics and then you want to get away from comics?
I try sometimes to read comics, but I don't have that much time, so I just look through it and look people's work. I need to know what have been publishing. So Roger Cruz is not working on Marvel anymore. He's doing his own stuff, own comics. So it's kind of hard to follow. But the Kubert brothers, Geraldo, let me see who's else. No, I keep following them on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, Joe Madureira left comics for video games, and he came back very briefly a couple of years ago.
That's way too bad, but he's rich now, so why bother?
Have you are there conventions in Brazil that you have attended as a guest or as an exhibitor? Have you traveled to other countries to be at a comics convention?
Only Brazil. Uh, uh, I was at the first Comic Con experience in 2014, but have never gone another. I, I don't think it's worth it. It's way too far, way too expensive, and at some point you see that you actually lost money. My work is not publishing here, so people don't know me.
Is that a goal of yours to have your work published there?
That'd be awesome. I do think there was just Aquaman and Justice League here, but G.I. Joe, First Strike, Dungeons and Dragons, and other stuff have never.
Okay. Are there comic book stores where you
Yeah,
are?
yeah, a lot.
What are they like?
Not as good as USA ones, but there's comics, not too much girls, so it's pretty similar.
Are they
This is
selling
smaller.
a lot of Okay. Are they selling a lot of single issues or bigger books? Is it a lot of locally produced or Brazilian comics or foreign translations? Are there toys and games? What's a store near you like?
Here in my city, there was two big ones. There is a lot of comics books, some figures, some statues too, and pretty much it. There is not too much, Brazilian comic books there. Mostly mainstream comics. I actually
From
work.
America?
Yes, I worked
Okay.
on the original graphic novel called Justiça Sideral. It was a Brazilian webcomic, and we printed it in a 4 issues book, like a TPB. But
Yeah.
it's not easy to find. That is mostly in libraries, something like that.
Do you know how many copies were printed?
2,000, 3,000. Not
Okay,
too
a very
much.
small,
Yeah.
small print run.
The goal was to print it and have it at someone's else hands, someone special, like someone at Image or someone at IDW. So we could make it happen outside too,
Right.
but it never worked out, sadly.
In terms of things that you'd like to work on and have work out in the future, where what would be your dream projects? What would be the project within comics, or potentially beyond, that you would really want to aspire towards?
That's quite a few. I would love to do a Snake Eyes miniseries. I actually have talked about that with Snake Eyes Dead Game writer, Chad Bowers.
Uh-huh.
And he had that goal too. We tried to make it happen, but it didn't. But I still want to work on Spiderman, on Batman, uh, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, mostly that. Uh, when you work on big groups of characters, it's pretty hard. It takes a lot of work, a lot of planning to put them on the scene, because there is the dialogues, so you have to put on exactly place, and remember it's a piece of art, so it still must look cool.
Mm-hmm.
Even a lot of shady heads, it must look cool. So I actually prefer to work on one hero comic book
Yeah.
instead of big groups like Avengers or even G.I. Joe. If it was a Duke miniseries, Scarlet miniseries, Snake Eyes miniseries, I would love it.
Yeah, and I mean, and maybe it would be an easier sell if Larry is able to get on board with the idea of a Snake Eyes
Yeah,
miniseries, for example, that is set in the ARAH universe.
definitely.
And I don't know, maybe it's an extended Untold Tale, or maybe it's that something that really puts a spotlight on the throwdown version of Snake Eyes, and we can find out where he is now following the events of Snake Hunt.
Yeah, but I believe with the movie coming out soon, they will do that.
Yeah, you'd expect them to do something, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
And you said before about kind of like the weapons in the world of GI Joe, and how that was a little bit of a challenge at first,
Yeah,
and you kind of started using a lot more reference and trying to get them exact to make people a little bit happier with all of the details. So how did you end up feeling about that side of things? Because what a big part of GI Joe is that it's a military book. There's a lot of detail in the costumes, in the vehicles, in the weaponry. um is it something that you continue to just find a little bit difficult and frustrating, or did you kind of get into it and eventually start enjoying it, that side of things?
um, I do enjoy drawing these scenes because the storytelling is fun, but all the research, there is a lot of it. Each weapon you see in the comics, there was Larry specifically choose for that scene.
Mm.
So you have to find a good reference for it, the right angle, the right weapon, and sometimes you use the same reference for different characters. But if you tap on Google the name of the gun, sometimes there is a totally different gun.
Yeah.
And I don't know too much guns details, So it's really challenging. But to find characters, reference for the costumes, the faces in hair, it's fun. It's fun. So that's fun. So I can
And
figure out how can I make it look cooler and looking like it's not a 18's character to make it look like there's a today's character.
oh yes, interesting. So you said not like an 80s character, but keeping it modern, it contemporary.
Yeah.
Because I guess a lot of the a lot of the characters and the classic looks for them were created in the 80s, coming up for almost 40 years. So yeah, interesting idea that how do you incorporate that and make them still feel modern and contemporary and cool in inverted commas.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
And I know that you've been very modest about your English, and let me say that how impressed that I've been with your speaking on this interview, that it certainly doesn't feel like you're struggling as a non-native speaker. You're being very articulate. So
Thanks so
so
much.
you don't need to worry or be too modest. Your English is certainly very good. And has that element, the level of your English, has that kind of reached where it is now as almost as a consequence of working on G.I. Joe and other comic books, where so much of the script and the communication is in English? Has your English improved a lot over the last few years?
A lot. Because Larry used some very different words to describe the scene. Sometimes it's just impossible for me to understand. So I ask him to lay out for me.
Uh-huh.
But I don't tell him what the heck you mean. I ask gently. But
And
uh,
I've
you,
seen a couple of examples that Larry shared. I think from that silent issue that we were talking about, possibly, or maybe it was your very first issue. There was a splash page with Dawn slicing red ninjas, and I've also seen a page from, what was it from? I think it was Artificial Intelligence, where the throwdown Snake Eyes. There's a cool action sequence where I think he throws up his guns and reloads the ammunition as
yes,
they come down again.
yes.
Was that quite? How common was that then, that you'd work with Larry and he'd provide you with a layout idea to kind of help explain his concept?
But I remember there was on scene in silent option. I believe issue two. They were at that platform,
Mm-hmm.
and there was they were moving like actually soldiers does, and I don't know what is that. So I actually asked Larry's help, and it was page 4, 5, 6, about page 6, page 7 of issue 2. When it's something very tactical. So I usually don't know what the heck it means.
Okay. So I didn't get the word. He was describing something as tactical. Did you say?
Yes, the way they were
Aha.
moving like doing something soldiers does, like one protecting another, and one like two in front, two in the middle, two behind, like
Right.
6 characters around a corridor or something like that. And
Yeah.
in issue 276, he Let me check. I have the issue here. 276 on page. There is the first page. Snake Eyes and crew face the villain. The villain was up there. If you guys have the book,
Yeah, I've got it. Yep.
making see there was Larry's layout. We can see villains up there on panel 1 and panel 2. Then Snake Eyes starts climbing up.
Climbing up the scaffolding on this
Yes.
cooling tower. Mm-hmm.
This one is Larry's layout.
Uh-huh.
His layout is more conservative. It's more grading, like old school.
Yeah, they're not splashy.
Yeah, my layouts are usually way different from his, but I try to keep up.
But yeah, was generally that process pretty smooth? The language wasn't too much of a barrier.
It always is, but I read and understand better than I speak out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh yeah.
I started to translate my own scripts, instead of ask someone else, as I have done before that. On G.I. Joe and Dungeons and Dragons, I was already translating that for myself, which helps a lot to understand, but doesn't help to speak.
Yeah, I mean it's a very different skill, isn't it? Sort of being able to read and being able to speak. There was there's quite in English comics and in over on my side of the world there was quite a big tradition of fielding out art to probably more Spanish speakers, like in Spain and probably even in Mexico, that where they, just because they were cheaper, and the comics publishers trying to save money by sending out the pages to be done by these foreign artists who were very good, but and then there was a whole industry formed around that of these agencies who would get in the scripts, translate them into Spanish, and field them out to their artists, who would then work on them, send them back into their agency and back into the book, and there would be kind of no direct contact between the comic, the artist, and the writer. They were all kind of completely independent, sort of working through this this sort of agency system. And I don't think this kind of thing happens so much today, because there's a much more direct relationship between an artist, a writer, and editorial. But yeah, something from history there.
At some point, people say to you, "Stop being lazy and go learn some English," and they don't have translators anymore. In Rascunho, when I started to work with them in 2011, 2012, they had a translator, which helped me a lot. But at some point, they have fired her. I don't know why. So I leave the studio, and started in another, in Chiaroscuro, from Joy Prado. But it wasn't working out for me. We have different opinion of how the artist's career should be. So I leave it there too, and started another, being represented by another agent, which was a freak. And I have to leave him and going back to Rascunho because of the partnership with Comic Con Art of Gord Chabot. So I have to translate by my own.
So you just mentioned Joe Prado and previously Mark mentioned Mike Deodato Jr. and there's Ed Benes, these Brazilian artists who broke into Marvel and DC in the 90s and brought some other artists with them or had studios. Is there a so you're self-taught until you apprenticed with Gerald Borges, but you know it's not like you went to a comic book school like the Kubert School, right, or an art school. Is there a pressure amongst artists in Brazil who want to break into comics to somehow work with the artists who have worked with the American publishers? Are there so many artists trying to break in that there are many other studios? Because you've mentioned a few others that I haven't heard of before. What is your sense of sort of how big it is, how popular it is, and how some studios are maybe more influential than others?
Yeah, I mean, chiaroscuro is definitely one of the bigs of the world. But, it's kind of complicated because different agencies have different policies. So when an artist sends samples to someone to represent them, they have to know what they want to. It's not work with comics. If you want to make money and support a family, you have to work. Doesn't matter if it's an indie publisher, if it's small client, or Marvel or DC. So bigger studios like chiaroscuro, big opportunities and bigger pressure, because you are fighting with Ivan Reis, with Ed Barros, with Paulo Siqueira. They are the best now. So you have to, start small and keep evolving until you get better works, better opportunities, which will pay better. Not sure if I make myself clear here.
No, yes, very clear.
So when I worked with chiaroscuro, they wanted me to work for Marvel or for DC, but my work wasn't ready. So I have to leave to get work and support my family. And now I have someone else help me, but I actually get a lot of work myself because of Twitter, because of Facebook, Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
But if you send samples to Marvel, to DC, they probably won't even respond to you. So you have to need an agent to make that bridges,
Right, to make the connection.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your wife colors comics?
Yes. She's doing a cover right now.
Has she colored any of your art for publishers?
Yep. I did 2 covers, one for Adventure Comics and another for Terra Something Comics, both American. Advent Comics for Tony Kittrell. So I have actually drawn an entire issue for him last year of Titan, I don't know, Titan. And it was issue 3. I did cover for issue 4, and she did the colors. He asked her, actually.
Cool. Well, there are a few husband and wife art teams out there in comics, right? Writer artist or artist or artist colorist.
Yes, a lot.
Alridge.
I believe the most recognizable is Terry Dodson and Rachel.
Yeah. Also, yeah, what Mark just said, the Mike Allred and Laura Allred, and then there's Jimmy Palmiotti and
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
Amanda.
Amanda Connor.
Amanda Connor.
Yes, yes. Hopeful can work less, and she works more.
Well, I mean, but besides the joke, there it is. You were talking before about you can pencil a certain way, but some of it is up to the inker and the colorist. So it sounds like what you're saying is that if you can draw a little less because you know and trust the artist who's next to you to finish the artwork in color, it does take some of the pressure off.
Yeah, actually, I can ink and I can color, but I'm too slow to do that. So when I see someone else over mine, I know how I wanted that to be. So I am a pain in the ass. I know that, but I try to give them some freedom too. So I usually work with Jagdish Kumar, which I love his work, and I let him do his stuff. He does great. But for colors, I usually am very picky. But when I work on G.I. Joe, I have never seen colors before the final print, you know. When we finish pencils, inks, and colors and letters, Tom usually share with us a PDF so we can see the full issue, covers and interiors. So if we catch something wrong, there is some time to fix it. But mistakes keeping happening. Like issue like the last Snake Hunt issue. No, the first Snake Hunt issue. I was credited with Tom Hoyle cover. I can never draw that good.
You mentioned Jagdish Kumar. Did you pick him? Did the editors pick him? How did you start to work with him?
I did. I saw his work on the covers and started to follow Jones, Facebook and Twitters, and saw who was doing the inks, and tracked him down on Facebook and asked him to work with me.
Do you know where he's located?
India,
Wow.
yeah. And I don't speak his language. He doesn't speak mine. But we both speak English one each other. It's crazy.
Wow.
Jagdish Kumar, he normally inks digitally. Is that right?
On the computer, not on the paper?
Yeah, traditional inker.
Oh, he does
On
do
paper.
traditional inks.
Yeah,
Okay.
he does a beautiful job. I'm still working with him on another project.
Very good. I had one random question, which
Go ahead.
was that I'm going to be talking to Paddy Lennon tomorrow, and he shared with me the Helix and Cobra Trooper commission that you did for him. Do you remember that one?
She was with a
She's
knife.
standing over. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I remember.
And and I think he was joking. He was joking that she had just chopped off his bits, his man parts. I was wondering if he ever asked about that as part of the commission, or what it was that he actually asked you for.
I don't actually remember what he asked
Okay.
for, but let me share something with you guys. When I was about to do Silent Option, Tom Waltz asked me to do a new costume for Helix.
Uh-huh.
He said it was about to be ARAH, G.I. Joe Real American Hero chronology costume. So I had to do something different from the original Chuck Dixon series. And bothers me that no one else used that costume. That
Your redesign.
yeah, that's supposed to be the a real American hero chronology design from hers. When Robert took over the GI Joe again for Snake Hunt, he had to draw her on the first issue, and I was about to draw her later when I step up to help him. And I asked Tom, which costume should I use? Robert used a different one. Should I match the one he's used? And he said, no, use the one you created. So you guys perhaps have saw that.
Yeah, interesting. I hadn't actually picked up on that element. I noticed that the sword was different, but I didn't pick up the fact that Robert was using a different costume design. I guess because a lot of the primary elements there in terms of the color palette is similar. And I guess a recognizable costume that the eye reads it as it looking right without
Uses
necessarily
something yellow is Helix.
Yeah. Exactly. And were there any other sort of behind the scenes stories of the creation of your G.I. Joe issues that you can remember that you'd like to share?
I remember we going crazy when people started to say that was some dead G.I. Joe walking around on the book. So we have discussed about that behind the cameras. And Tom Waltz came up with the idea to bring Diana to help us. And she helped a lot. I remember I did some pages and she pointed up. Is that someone? I don't remember the name. Is that someone who is already dead? So I have to redraw. But even she have missed some details too. Because there are a lot of characters, a lot of things happening.
Yeah.
So mistakes keep rolling on as issues were coming out. But she got credits on the book.
Yeah, we talked to Diana. Was it 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So
She's
we
great.
found out a little bit. Yeah, it was a great chat. It was really interesting to hear her stories of what her kind of side of the story about how she interacts with the going-ons of the book. It was really interesting to find out.
For some reason she doesn't like Duke. I don't know why.
Can't stand that guy. Yeah, strange.
I remember Tom asking me to do the Sherlock arc that Andrew is drawing now.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted it so bad because it's a new character. New character, it's always important to that universe. So I tried to fit it in my schedule, but didn't work out. But at some point, I started to think with myself, if I have, got that job, which design I would come up with for the character. I may share that week, this week, or maybe next week on my Twitter.
Oh, you do have an alternate take on Sherlock.
I do have for my own.
Okay. Is this something you came up with before you saw the final design or after?
After.
Okay.
I saw that he, just like me, have got some Larry sketches and have worked over it and updated it. So I will share my version over Larry's original design, not Andrew's.
Yeah.
But don't take me wrong, Andrew is amazing artist. I'm loving the preview pages I have seen around.
Yeah, and we're both fans of the first issue, the first chapter of that story.
Yeah, he's great. He's great, truly great. I'm very happy for him.
We noticed, G.I. Joe has an anniversary next year, and issue 300 is coming along in the future, which seems like a good place to have artists back, if possible, who have worked on the series. Maybe that's a place where you could return for a few pages or a whole issue.
I would love that. Definitely. But it's up with Tom.
And your crazy schedule, your schedule and the G.I. Joe schedule.
Yeah, it's crazy, but sometimes we can make it work. If it is one shot, it's more likable. It's more likable.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to go back to G.I. Joe. I have talked with Megan sometimes, and if there's some G.I. Joe cover I can do, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
But she's not taking over G.I. Joe stuff. She's just helping Tom, so Tom does make those decisions. But my cover is not that strong, like John Hoyle on Robert or Andrew.
I think you're being modest. I mean,
I will. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the likes of your very first cover on 246, and I think that was like instantly iconic. So I think, don't be too modest.
I will agree with Mark that Netho, you draw exciting covers, but I think what I'm also hearing in your statement that you don't think your covers are all that strong. Drawing covers is a different skill than drawing interiors, and in some ways it's easier because it's only one image. It's not 4 or 5 or 6. It can often mean less background or no background.
Yeah.
And it can take less time because there's one thing to figure out, not 4 or 5 or 6 things to figure out. But it's harder to draw a cover because that cover has to read from far away. It has to grab your attention. It has to leave room for the logo. It has to, in some cases, like those splash pages in the final chapter of Snake Hunt, it has to both tell a story and also be sort of a splash page, and also be not too crowded. And there are definitely some artists out there in comics who can do both really well. There are some artists who draw excellent interior pages and have strong storytelling skills, and who can draw good covers, but who don't compose sort of the best covers. So that is a different skill.
Yes, definitely. Besides all the elements you mentioned, you have to think about the composition. It have to look cool. It have to follow the rules. And very often there's a lot of characters to put on it. So it's not about do a cool image of them. You have to do a very cool and awesome image of them.
Right.
Because when they are at comic book shops shelves, there are some other great comics, great covers, some Alex Ross covers. So which one will you pick? You will pick the one that call your attention. So if you have a strong cover, it means more sales. Sometimes at G.I. Joe, I remember asking me Tom asking me to do one cover, and I did for him like 8 or 10 different layouts for a cover, and he picks like 5. For Down Arishikage Run, I did all layouts for all the covers for when we was about to do the first cover. And he asked me this one here, this one there, this one there. So he picked them all right there.
And yeah, there's also something complicated about drawing a cover because, and this is something I don't think about. Nowadays, lots of comics, someone draws the interiors and someone else draws the covers.
Yeah.
But, you know, historically, for many decades, most comics, the person who drew the interiors also drew the cover. And if you have your monthly schedule worked out, where you're going to draw, you know, 1 page a day, 5 days a week for 4 weeks, you know, that's 20 pages. But if a comic back then was 22 pages, you're also working, you know, one Saturday and another Saturday. If you then also have to draw the cover, you have to build that into your schedule.
Yes.
And if the cover is supposed to be the most exciting thing, it can be hard, sort of like, well, I've already drawn a page today. I have to start the cover and I'll finish it tomorrow night after I draw another page, you know, when I'm tired from drawing all day. So another challenge in drawing a cover, if the artist is also drawing that issue, is just fitting it into a schedule.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. When I was working on G.I. Joe, the book was always late. You know, there is a lot of problems that it's out of our control, out of Tom's control too. So when you see a licensor book like G.I. Joe, like Cobra Kai, like Dungeons and Dragons, or others, they usually are late on schedule because licensors sometimes takes a while to review the book. So because of that, on the beginning you have a lot of time, but at the end you don't have it. So when I started to work on a G.I. Joe book, the cover is the first thing we do, because while Larry is writing the story, I'm already working on the cover. You know, so
Yeah.
it saves some time later.
Yeah, but you also have to design the cover, not knowing quite exactly what's going to be on the inside always.
Yeah, that's why G.I. Joe have not related interiors cover.
Yeah, it's like the Untold Tales issue that you've got. You've got the same team that's in the book: you know, Stalker, Snake Eyes, Torpedo, Scarlet, but they're not sort of invading that you know, compound that we see on the interior with the cooling tower and stuff. It looks like they're maybe in a, I don't know, hostage siege or something. They're sort of bursting through the window.
Yeah, that's what Tom asked me. He said me was about to going on the issue, the team, the story, but we didn't know where it was going to happen. So I tried to figure it out, and you know, got it wrong.
Yeah, not wrong, but different.
Could be better. Could be better.
Yeah, I don't know that there was. If you weren't told, no way of predicting, right? I mean, the John Royal cover, I guess, as well, probably was done in mind of who would be on the interiors, who the characters would be, because this time we do have a John Royal cover where the characters match on the cover what's on the inside, and we've got Torpedo, Snake Eyes, and Scarlet. But on that cover, they're in the in the middle of the sea, and it's raining. Then definitely not in the definitely not in a desert somewhere.
Yeah, definitely.
So you are slightly closer than John at any rate.
At least I got the team.
Yeah, you match the people, and that's definitely a start. I think I've used up all of my questions, and we've taken up 2 hours of your time. So probably getting to the close to the end now. Was there anything, Tim, that you wanted to ask that we've not covered?
No, I'm also at the end of my list,
Okay.
and we covered many wonderful things I hadn't thought of beforehand.
Excellent. So Neetha, was there anything that we've not spoken about yet that you feel that we should? So any tales of GI Joe, and also anything that we should be looking out for work that's coming out at the moment or coming out in the future that we should be keeping our eyes out for.
I worked on Bobby Valla's Action Force that G.I. Joe probably will enjoy a lot. There is one, fighted G.I. Joe there, and it's pretty cool. So you guys may want to check it out like next month. I won't return to G.I. Joe so soon, but it's definitely on my plan return to the book sometime. Thanks so much, guys, for inviting me, and so sorry for my English. So sorry.
No, nothing to apologize for.
And thanks again.
Thank you for giving us so much of your morning and for sharing. This has been great.
Absolutely. And I think if people want to find you, is the best place Twitter?
Yes, I'm always on Twitter, Facebook, and rarely on Instagram. Mostly on Twitter and Facebook.
Cool. That's at Netho Diaz with 2 Z's. Where can people find more about you, Tim?
People can find me at Instagram, A Real American Book, which I'm going to get back to now that it's the summer. Facebook, A Real American Book, but best of all, arealamericanbook.com.
And so, yeah, I think that's all from us too. So next time on Talking Joe on the Disavowed Show, we'll be talking about Devil's Due issue 20 and 21, which is a 2-parter called Closure, featuring Mike Zeck on art of one of the issues. So looking forward to discussing that. And then we'll also be discussing the latest ARAH issues as they come out. The next one will be issue 282, the second part of Murder by Assassination, with art from Andrew Griffith. And you can find us in all of the usual places. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website that has all of those places listed. The Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, and our contact details. It's also got a link to our Patreon, so big thanks to all of our backers: Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, and Christopher, and Justin, who are all getting early access to episodes as well as some exclusive content. So big thanks to Netho for joining us, but when all's said and done, you can catch us down the road.
Because we've been Talking Joe.
And we're all out of Joes. Laters. And that is the end.
Oh, it's great, guys. It's great. I love to practice language and talking another language. Even I don't do that too well, but it's great to understand what you guys say. So because of that, we are able to have this conversation.